that's when albums were art. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you have someone like Eminem who finally gets to a place in his career where he can make his album because he's been, you know, listening to Dre and NW, you know, whatever records he came up on. And it's like, now I get my opportunity, and it like comes out before it's ready.
Guys, give it up for the team behind How Music Got Free. It's a little thing we do. It's a little thing we do. There we go. There we go. Guys, congrats on this series. I was just telling you off camera how much I am enjoying it thus far. You guys, you know, just shine really insightful new light on something that a lot of us lived through, but had really no idea what was happening at the time or really since. Stephen, let's start with you because I believe this was based on a book. I know this was based on a book you wrote.
Yes, it's based on a book I wrote.
So what can you say about, you know, what first drew you to this subject? Why did you want to explore the you know, the digital music revolution and all the sort of good and bad that came with it? And also, you predating the digital music revolution in the breadth of this, but what first drew you in?
Yeah, well, I had pirated a ton of music. I mean, I just had a ton of music, like 10,000 albums on my hard drives, and they were full. This is kind of before the cloud, and I was like, God, how did all this get here? What is an MP3? How is this possible? What happened? Yeah. And as I researched it, I realized almost no one had an answer. So I went to Germany and interviewed the guys who invented the MP3, but I could see that there was something that they weren't telling me. And what had happened is that the MP3 was initially a flop. And so they just posted it online for public download for free. And all these kind of like teenage boys started to experiment with it and started to form these kind of like loose digital gangs that raced each other to be the first to post pirated music online. And as they did that, they got further and further into the music industry supply chain until they found a guy who was actually working inside the CD manufacturing plant. That guy was Del Glover, and he became the centerpiece for the book and the centerpiece for the show.
It is really a trip down memory lane watching this because I'm just picturing myself in my bedroom with my brother discovering Napster and downloading all kinds of shit and like discovering music. And you guys dig into this a little bit, like discovering music that you didn't even know existed, like stuff that hadn't been released or like remixes. And I was like just getting into DJing, so I was getting really excited about like finding new remixes to play. And it's very evocative. So it's really, really illuminating to see sort of how deep you guys go into the background. But Alex, tell us a little bit about how you came on board this project and sort of like your own personal connection and how much music you illegally download.
I'll leave that for not this interview. Yeah. I have a really long history with Spring Hill and have been doing docs for them for a while. And they got the rights to Stephen's book. And actually Jamal Henderson, who's an exec there, was like, I think that...
Shout out to Jamal.
Shout out to Jamal. I think that he like approached me first and was like, and Phil Byron, both of them, they were like, this feels like a project that you would probably like. Read the book. I read the book. I fell in love with it. I remember reading the book and like, I didn't even have the gig yet, but I just was like taking notes of things that like, I was like, I want to know more about this person. And it was just so exciting because it was like a thriller, but where no one knows that they're in the thriller.
Right.
And so then I met Stephen and then we got along really well. And then we started the 5-year journey of making this project. And so we're just really, you know, I'm excited to be here and to finally kind of be sharing it with the world.
The first episode teases, it's the secret history of the music biz that they don't want you to know. I don't know how spoilery you guys want to get, because obviously you want to lure people in and with that tease, but who are they and why don't they want you to know?
They are the executives, particularly at Universal Music Group. It was now run by Lucian Grange, but at the time was run by Doug Morris. And what had happened is Doug was a very canny businessman. He cornered the market on rap music. So almost all of the rappers, 50 Cent, Eminem, Dr. Dre, Tupac Shakur, were all on this one kind of like overarching corporate label. But they had a leak inside their plant. So as they rolled up all the rappers, it meant that more and more stuff went through this one CD manufacturing plant, making Del sort of the inside man, just giving him more and more stuff to leak to the public. Once that was revealed, I don't think that they wanted people to know that. You know, I don't think they wanted people to know that they'd had this kind of long-standing security hole, including their own artists. And so when I kind of came to Doug, this was back in 2015 when he was still in charge of Universal, which was the biggest music company in the world. It was a tough conversation because I could see there were certain portions of this that were embarrassing to Universal.
Alex, what were you most surprised about learning throughout this process? Just digging deep into this industry and spending all these years telling these stories.
I think, to piggyback what he was talking about, the hubris of the industry, and how it's like these technology cycles are still like hitting the powers that be in the same way. It might be, like I think film is really interesting right now, that technology is changing at such a fast rate, and it's like, what lessons can we learn from the past to like embrace technology in a way that doesn't, before it's too late and it just gets totally disrupted and it burns all down and you have to rebuild. I think just knowing that, hearing stories about, record execs, being shoved into a room after the Grammys and the head of the RIA, Hillary Rosen, telling them, guys, we have a problem. Like, this is really serious. There's this thing called Napster and all the kids are on it. And name a song, any song, and she could play it right there. And the execs were like, cool. Okay. I'm hungry. Are we going to lunch now? And just totally ignoring that. And it was like the end. Right. So that was really crazy to me. But I think the biggest surprise for me was understanding, it was really interesting for me as a filmmaker to understand these like brilliant technological brains of these kids, these kids that were just so, that, they're not Bill Gates, it's not, Zuckerberg, it's not all the famous people that we talk about over and over and over again. These are just like normal kids from all over the country, different socioeconomic classes that were really changing the game. And, the biggest one is Del Glover. He didn't even go to college. He's a, high school graduate out of Shelby, North Carolina. And, from a long lineage of Black farmers, in the country. And the fact that he was like this prodigy, it just, to me, as a Southerner and as a Black filmmaker, it was really exciting to kind of like challenge what we think about when we think about tech geniuses.
Yeah, it was so fascinating. The music industry was just refusing to invest in the future. Right. They were refusing to build the next generation of supply. They were making so much money off compact discs, and they just couldn't let it go. And so guys like Del and teenagers around the country built it for them.
They were literally analog in a digital world.
Yeah,
like that's had to be. Is that where that expression came from? Because they were not, because they could have monetized so much earlier than they did, right?
Well, the racks of CDs at the mall to the record executives, that was inventory. Yeah. That was valuable inventory.
Yeah.
But to the engineers and to the pirates, it was just data. It was just data, and they only needed one to reproduce it a million times across the planet.
Yeah.
And the record industry just wouldn't build it. They just wouldn't build it. So these kids built it for them.
I love digging into the whole mythology and history of the CD, just as like a music head, who's a vinyl head, but also like I think there's a lot of us of a certain generation that like I've kept all my CDs just in case the apocalypse, just in case like there's a digital apocalypse,
just in case it gets
all my music disappears.
Yeah.
I still have those CDs in a closet somewhere. Recognizable narrator.
Yes.
How did Mr. Method Man from Wu-Tang come on board?
Out of a lunch conversation with Malik Johnson and Mike Miniachi, and I felt like it needed a narrator again because it's this weird story of the FBI, the music industry, the pirates, and the artist, but they don't understand that each ecosystem really exists or how they're impacting each other. So I felt like a narrator was really important to kind of like become the dramatic irony or, to kind of become the voice that the audience could help you go on this journey with. And we were trying to think of the best person that kind of would also feel a bit now, but also back then. And out of that lunch meeting we figured that Method Man would be like the dopest narrator ever. And I was like, yeah, like we're going to get Method Man. And then we got him. Amazing. And he was amazing. And the VO sessions were really amazing because he would record the VO, but then he would like give us these sidebars of like how he was impacted, by Del. And he's like, this is the man who like destroyed like everything. He's like, I can't believe I'm like doing this guy's movie. Like, but it was really cool.
It was fascinating to me. You know, when I was writing the book, I didn't have access to 50 Cent and Eminem. I was writing it independently. But with this project, we did get that access. It's amazing to see how much these, you know, Dell, a factory worker, these kids around the country impacted the livelihoods and even artistic choices of these artists. So that's the thing that really, to me, brought this documentary to the next level.
Again, I've only seen the first episode, but meeting Dell and liking Dell, and then seeing that old footage of Eminem going, whoever leaked my record, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna punch him in the face. Like, there's like physical violence. Were you guys worried about Dell's safety?
No, they've gotten over it. You know, Eminem is a producer on the film. It's all love. They're not all going to be in the same room at the same time, though.
Okay, so they have not met.
They haven't met. I think that for every artist that I went and sat down with, you know, from Timbaland to 50 to M, it's even Jimmy Iovine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was his business that like got really rocked. And I think that there was like an instant like gut punch of like, are you serious? Like, this is the story. Like, this is who it was. It wasn't my producer. You know, it wasn't someone who was the DJ or whatever.
Right.
But it quickly went from that to like, damn, like just respect, like how genius, you know, was this operation. That's every conversation.
Respect for the hustle. There was a respect for the hustle.
Respect for the hustle.
Yeah.
You know, like how can you hate on these kids? Like, you know, so.
Yeah. How intense was it to shoot with Eminem? He seems a little intense.
He's great. It was an amazing. I was in Detroit and went to him, and it was awesome. You know, Paul Rosenberg is also a part of this project, and it was cool just like kicking it with them, and really like every interview was like going down. It was nostalgic for them, and it was like they were getting triggered by like the PTSD that they had from like their albums, you know, coming out and before they were ready. And I think on the flip side, I think what M brought to the table was like really understanding he's an artist. And it wasn't that he didn't want kids to have stuff for free necessarily. I mean, there is a cost to doing business. And I think that was like, guys, like.
She spells out.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, that's when albums were art. And, you know, you have someone like Eminem who finally gets to a place in his career where he can make his album because he's been, you know, listening to Dre and NW, you know, whatever records he came up on. And it's like, now I get my opportunity, and it like comes out before it's ready. So,
well, South by feels like the perfect place to premiere this thing because there is a film and TV side, and then there's a music side, and you guys kind of land squarely in the middle. Before you go, I'm going to just, I've been asking people, because this is also a festival that celebrates, you know, music and rising up and coming acts that maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with. You got any music recs for us? Who's somebody on the rise, or somebody that, you know, a musician that maybe not everybody knows yet that you would recommend downloading legally?
Don't download illegally, especially now, because artists really need those dollars.
Yes.
But you know, I'm actually like more in a nostalgia. Like I was all in new stuff, and right now, like on my trip out here, I'm deep back into UGK. I just moved back home to Houston, so I'm like falling in love with UGK and like, you know, DJ Screw and ESG, and trying to think of that for a new world, a new project that I'm building.
Ghetto Boys? Were Ghetto Boys Houston?
The Ghetto Boys are Houston, Fifth Ward. Okay. So I'm actually trying to get kids to understand more of the origins of rap versus like, you know.
Hell yeah.
Do you guys know Big X the Plug? He's from Texas. He's good. He's coming out right now. He's coming up. I would check him out.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys for coming through. Sure. Great to talk to you.
Thank you for having us.
All right.